Right, so that is recording. So now we're going to look at your basic guard. So I'll just jump up, get my chair out of the way. All right, so the guard is fairly simple. It's similar to a lot of other fighting systems of the period because again, they're basically taking what they already do and then adapting it to a new weapon. But to start off, just stand with your feet in an L shape like this. You want your heels in line and you want to create a line between your back heel, your front heel, and the toes of your front foot, and which is also instantly the center line of the fight. That's the line that you line up with your opponent to either make sure that your center lines are aligned or more likely make sure that your center line faces them, whereas their center line doesn't face you if you want to, really mess with them. All right. So for the stance, just bend your knees to a comfortable degree. You don't want to stand bolt upright because, if you're standing with your legs straight, to move or to do like explosive movements, the first thing you're gonna do is bend your knees. So you might as well cut out the middleman. And if you don't bend your knees, the thing you'll probably do is try and fall at your opponent, which is also not great because one, you're very unstable, and for two, if you lose your footing or if your opponent does something unexpected, you can actually fall over, which I've never done, but I have seen people do, and it's hilarious. All right, so knees nicely bent. Then you want to move to your feet apart till they're about probably about two of your foot widths. I find that's a nice kind of comfortable stance. Your legs are nicely bent. You've got enough space in your legs that you're stable, but not so much that you're not able to move quickly. Some people find they prefer a slightly shorter stance. That's fine. Some people prefer a much longer stance. This is traditional to like Italian sailor. There's really big, deep stance. It's just that's what they like. That's cool as well. There's no hard and fast rules other than sort of do what works. But generally, I find what works best is roughly two of your foot widths between your feet. All right. So the knife, all you do is put your arm, bend your arm at about 90 degrees, like this. And let it rest with the elbow. I usually go with 2 to 3 fingers in front of the ribs. You don't want it like tucked into the ribs, but just kind of gently, gently close by. The knife itself, the blade needs to be pointed. The blade needs to be forward enough that if you extend, you can stab your opponent, but high enough up that you can also deliver a quick chop to the arm. And so you want to, in the case of the knife, probably up at about 45 degrees. And this doesn't just aid with attacks. This also stops or makes it harder for your opponent to seize your knife because now they have to reach around your point. Whereas if you have your knife entirely flat, they can come down and grab your hand really, really quickly. And if you have your knife all the way up, they can come in forward and grab your hand really, really quickly and easily. And also some of the defense stance, the rule manuals actually suggest kicking someone in the hand, not in the cinematic, like old 80s ninja movie where they kick the knife out of the hand, but rather you basically drive the toe of your shoe into someone's hand to hurt it and upset them. So about 45 degrees is good. The backhand can sit in one of two positions. One is it can be bent at 90 degrees and sit up here like you would in foil. So it can be extended for counterbalance, like you're doing foil or épée fencing. You want to keep the wrist relaxed, which is mine is bending forward. Just nice and loose, not just to throw it back for balance when you're lunging, but also to throw it forward and grab your opponent's knife if the opportunity arises. The other place you can hold it and where you hold it is up to you. So you can have it down here, more like a period kind of boxing stance. The hand is a little bit further forward, and this allows you to quickly reach up and grab. It does mean that the offhand can be a target. So someone, rather than chopping at your knife hand, might chop at your offhand. But that's the price you pay for being able to grab quicker. The other thing about this is if you have an object. So if you have say a jacket. I actually just brought this in because it's cold. I didn't realize I'd be using it until now. You can use this stance to use like your jacket or like a particularly thick hat or a shoe or something as a shield. And so this is our stance. We just hold nice and relaxed. And you know, from here, this is where we fight, or possibly from here, depending on. Really, if you're more of a fencer, you'll probably use this. If you're more of a boxer, you'll maybe use this, although I've met a lot of modern boxers who say it feels more natural to have the hand up here. The other thing to specify, if you've done a lot of fencing, you're used to standing really, really side on, this stance is actually much more front on. I'm forward in, well, the same way you are for period boxing. If I'm side on in period boxing, my power hand is so far away it will never reach my opponent. So I want to be just front on enough that it can fire quickly. And same idea here, although the reason for that is not just to be able to bring my backhand into play really quickly, it's also so I can flick this shoulder forward and get a little bit extra cheeky reach, because stealing distance is really, really important in knife. All right, so are there any questions before we move on? And I just remembered why it was I looked up a whole bunch of historical anecdotes before I did this, is because I promised everyone that I'd tell a historical anecdote whilst giving them time to either type or think of a question. And well, I'd say that I'm out of historical anecdotes, but that's a lie. I have many historical anecdotes, and you'll hear all about like the weird knife tricks that they have as well through the course of the workshop. But for now, I'm just going to check, are there any questions? That looks like a no. So I'm just going
in the grip, do you put the thumb against the top guard, or do you keep it slightly back from the top guard?
I personally have it with this knife. I have it against the top guard, but that's more a product of the handle and the fact that I've got this this bulge here. You can have it. You can have it a bit back. Some of my other knives that I hold, I do have it a little bit back. It kind of depends on the knife handle, but yeah, you can do it either way. I personally one of the things I also like about having it against the guard here is that it gives me a little bit of extra kind of feeling with where the knife is. But yeah, it's honestly, a lot of it is it's preference and also design of the knife handle. And if I get in here, like sometimes you will have knives that don't really have a grip as well. The only thing I'd recommend with those is that you don't necessarily let your thumb slip onto the back of the blade. Like try and keep them roughly on the handle if you can. Oh, and as a bit of trivia, I actually made this knife myself in a knife making course I did. And I wanted a blunt reenactment knife. And I got one that is not really safe to spar with because it's really, really stiff. But I did make it myself, which I'm very proud of. All right, cool. So are there any other questions? All right, I'll take that as a no, and I'll get a chance. All right, no, good. All right, I'm just gonna pause recording.